In this episode, I will cover Polynesian gangs like TCG and SOS, and a few other groups like TFL. All my people who are not aware are probably not from areas with polys. Samoans and Tongans come from the islands in the Pacific Ocean, and the Pacific Ocean is divided into 3 regions. And Samoa and Tonga is in the Polynesian region, and that's where the term poly comes from. Tongan and Samoan immigrants settled in America, especially in various places in California, like LA County and San Francisco, and many other places in NorCal and SoCal, followed by larger amounts coming in the 80s and 90s into what we see today. Both groups also settled in places outside of California, like Washington, Arizona, and Utah, and have a presence in those areas. The Tongan Crip gang, also known as TCG, started when immigrants from the islands of Tonga settled in many cities in California, causing the Tongan youth to start gangs to protect themselves. They took on the Crip identity off associations with Crip gangs, like the Inglewood branch having a great relationship with the Raymonds. The TCG have been around for over 40 years, in various places like Inglewood, Sacramento, and Utah, just to name a few. With many different branches in different areas, they beef with different hoods. The Inglewood branch has beef with various blood gangs and Mexican gangs in the area. The TCGs are known to wear Texas Ranger gear to represent Tonga and their set. The Sons of Samoa, also known as SOS, has similar beginnings as being around over 40 years and being started after coming from the islands of Samoa. Emerging in Long Beach, they built relationships with Crip gangs and built rivalries with gangs like the Longos and other Samoan gangs that claim blood, located in Carson. They also beef with Park Village, who has Samoans claiming that area. The SOS has branches outside of Long Beach in places like Sacramento and San Jose, just to name a few. The Sons of Samoa use the Seattle Mariners logo to represent their set. Now I'm going to go into some cases involving Samoans and Tongans. Bo, his uncle, and about 9 other Samoans from Park Village Compton Crip were at a Samoan Flag Day festival. Bo would see Frankie and several other rival SOS members enter the festival. Frankie would ask the Park Village Compton Crips, "What's cracking?" and told them, "Let's go outside." Once Bo and the Park Village group went outside, they seen about 10 SOS members. The SOS group would yell out, "We strapped." The Park Village group would yell, "We strapped too." Alice from Park Village would step into the street and call out Frankie to fade and the other SOS members. No one stepped in the street to catch his fade. Bo's uncle would try to make peace, but asked the SOS to catch Alex's fade and leave it at that, nothing more. Frankie would soon shoot at Bo's uncle, and he would lose his life. Frankie would be sentenced to 40 years to life. After a football game at Jordan High School on November 3rd, 2006, Jacob, Simon, Sam, and Sam's younger brother, and a girl named Natalia, will be walking on Atlantic Avenue. Jacob noticed a group of 3 cars, a Thunderbird, a Tahoe, and a small vehicle. A man named Shaka drove the Thunderbird. Nathan would be in a Tahoe with 2 females named Tina and Yolanda. The small car had Avery and 2 other women in it. The group in the cars would yell out TFL, which is a Tongan gang called Tongan for Life. Then ask Jacob and his group, where were they from? Someone from Jacob's group said SOS. TFL members would diss SOS and drove off. The group feared TFL would come back, so they went the other way on Atlantic. When they crossed the street, they heard Tongan for Life, then shots followed. Jacob would be shot in the leg, and Sam would be stood over and finished off. Nathan would be picked up on November 9th. He would tell officers he was a gangster and wasn't no rat, but he did the opposite of what a gangster would do. He told the officers to give him a piece of paper, and he wrote down Shaka's name. He would admit to everything, but later recanted and said he didn't know Shaka and was forced to write his name. A woman who was with TFL, who was at the shooting, would testify against Shaka and say he was a shooter and she feared him. Shaka was sentenced to 25 years to life. March 12, 2008. Mo, who was Samoan, was a security guard in the area of Jack in the Box, and Carson High School was across the street. Billy and Saya would pull up in a Ford and ask Mo where was he from, and told him this is Northside Long Beach, TFL. Mo responded by saying there's no beef and no problems, he's just doing his job. The Ford drove away, but turned back around. Billy shot at Mo 6 times. Once he fell, they drove away. They would only get 5 miles, and then they were pulled over and arrested. A witness from the school would identify the car and Billy as the shooter. Saya was said they shot Mo because his cousin was shot by a Samoan blood from Carson, and they seen people around Mo wearing red. Billy would say the same thing and say he felt disrespected by Mo. Billy received 25 years to life, and Saya received 19 years to life. Sheila was from a Samoan hood called Westside Paru in Carson. She started spending time with her cousin Fa. Fa's dad was an OG SOS member. Sheila was known to have Westside Paru members at her house. In November of 2008, SOS members tore up Sheila's house by busting car windows in her house and wrote all over her car dissing her and Westside Paru. On February 16, 2009, a gold Kia drove by Sheila's home a few times. Sheila recognized a man named Johnny and someone else in the car named Ross. They would throw up SOS and told Sheila they'll be back. Sheila's dad would come outside to see Johnny driving by again. He called his son Daniel, who was pulling up to their home. Johnny would drive by once again, and Sheila would yell, "That's him." Daniel would jump in his Yukon and have a car chase with Johnny. Daniel called 911 and gave a description of Johnny and his car. He would hear Johnny yell, "Let's blast on them." After calling Daniel's phone over and over to no answer, Sheila's parents, Sheila, and her cousin Fa jumped in their car to find Daniel. After several minutes, they seen Johnny in his Kia and followed him as he came to a stop on the street. They would soon see a man named Mike. Mike would shoot at the car, hitting Sheila's dad in the arm and the chest. Daniel arrived on the scene and his car was shot at multiple times before he drove away, but he wasn't hit. Mike would be accompanied by a few women before he got a call from Johnny saying Bloods were following him. One of the women would tell the police Mike did the shooting. Johnny would be picked up the next day, and he was identified as being one of the men that was involved. And Mike was identified as being the shooter by Sheila's parents and her brother Daniel. Mike and Johnny both received life. Around 10:30 p.m., April 17, 2012, Edward was sitting with his brother-in-laws Brandon and Ryan on their porch on South Street in Long Beach. 3 men in black hoodies would appear and start shooting at them. A man named Junior from SOS was one of the men charged in the shooting. He would be picked up in November of 2012, and he would say he did the shooting because his fellow SOS member house was shot up by a rival Samoan blood gang. But this wouldn't be the only shooting he was involved in. The night of July 21st, 2012, several Samoans will be having a family barbecue at Cherry Park in Long Beach. Many of the Samoans at the park were wearing red. 2 men would shoot up the park and run away. 2 people would be shot and 1 would lose his life. A woman who was in a car watching would identify Junior and would give a description of what happened. Junior's girlfriend would give her account on July 21st by saying she lived near the park and her and Junior drove by, and the people at the park threw up blood signs at them. Later that night, Junior left her house and told her he would call her when he needed to be picked up. He would call her about an hour later saying that him and a friend named Infant shot up the park. He would give her an alibi to say, but she would crack under pressure and tell police everything she knew. November 3rd, 2012, at Gold Club in Harbor City around midnight, a man named Thomas would be told to go outside by Junior. Once he didn't, the club would be shot up with multiple people being shot, including Thomas. It would all be captured on the club camera, and it was Junior. Junior would say he got whooped on by a bunch of Samoan Bloods at the club before, so he seen them at the club and began to shoot. Junior faced a long list of charges and received 330 years to life for all the shootings. This last case happened on November 9th, 2014. Shu and his friend E drove to get some food on Hawthorne Boulevard. E went in the restaurant to get the food, and Shu stayed in the parking lot and waited outside his car. He had on red. Shu always got mistaken for Samoan, but was actually Japanese. A Tongan man named Saya arrived in the parking lot shortly after. He got out of his car, walked up on Shu, and domed him. Shu would lose his life. Saya would jump in his car with a man named Christopher and would drive away. Police were only a block away and would pursue Christopher and Saya. Saya would jump out the car and get away, but he threw off his shirt during the chase, which led back to his DNA. He would be later caught. E would identify Saya as the shooter, and so would a worker who worked at the restaurant who often seen Saya pick up food from there. Saya was a TCG member who thought Shu was a Samoan blood, and that's why he did the shooting. Saya received life for the shooting. This will conclude this episode. If you haven't already, check out my previous videos. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.